Thanks for joining us on People with Passion for Pets. Today, I'm talking to an animal communicator and psychic medium. Her name is Mary Paulette, and her mission is to change the lives of animals and people around the world. Hi, MP.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. It's so nice to see you. How's your day going?
It's going well. How about you?
Good. I've got my Mr. Whiskers.
Oh, look at him. So cute. What a face.
Yeah, he's just curled up here in my lap.
So welcome, MP, to People with Passion for Pets. I'm so excited to have you on the show. You are a psychic medium and animal communicator for our audience. For some people, they may have never heard of an animal communicator. Can you kind of let me talk about what that is and what you do?
It's being able to talk to animals. And so I communicate with animals in the form of thoughts, feelings, sensations, visions, and sounds. And the way I like to describe it to my clients, it's like I get all of the pieces of the puzzle together and then I put them together and then I share with my clients what I'm seeing, hearing, feeling, etc., and experiencing as I'm putting the pieces of the puzzle together. So that allows me to communicate what's happening with their animals to them. And a more Hollywood, I guess, example would be Dr. Dolittle.
I love
Yeah.
that. I think a lot of times when people hear the word psychic, they automatically think of, speaking to ghosts or speaking to, past life forms. So is it that you talk to animals only that have already passed, or is it also animals that are in living form right now?
Yeah, it's animals in living form. I'll bring up Whiskers. There we
Hi,
go. He's sitting
Whiskers.
here on my lap. So if you see my arms moving, that's what I'm doing. But no, it's living and past. It's with people as well and inanimate objects that I can communicate with.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. And so what it is everything's energy as we know, right? And so there's an energetic vibration and I just have the ability to pull out the messages that are tied to some of those energetic vibrations in people, animals, and things as well. So
As an animal behaviorist, speaking about energetic communication. So when we work with our clients who oftentimes have animals with behavior issues, one of the first things we like to tell them is that there's usually a gap between the way that we communicate as humans and as animals, because as I like to say, animals are 98% body language energy, and that's how they communicate. And oftentimes as people, we rely so much on verbal communication. And so there's oftentimes that little gap of communication. And we can see, and our clients can see very quick results when we start teaching them to be more aware of their body language and what they're communicating energetically.
yes.
But you, of course, are taking that to a whole nother level. So you can actually verbalize what the animals are wanting to say, correct?
Yeah, and it's really interesting that you touch on that because I have one client who she rescued a dog, and he was not able to be left in the house more than a minute. She had bylaw that was called, neighbor complaints, like just one after another. And so when I was working with her, and now he can be left alone, totally fine in the house. Yeah, it's been an amazing shift. And so what I was saying to her, and I get my clients to verbalize, right? Because for us, like you were saying, that's the verbal communication. That's mostly how we communicate with people. But also to say the words so that they can channel the energy that goes along with that, right? So, like, you are loved, you belong, you are safe. There's an energetic vibration that goes along with those words. And so I like to encourage my clients to also use words too. Like, it's just, and it's, yeah, like you were saying, it's all about the energy that they're receiving.
So you are in Canada, but you help people all around the world. So I'm assuming that a lot of the sessions that you do and aren't done in person, they're probably done via phone or Skype. Is that correct?
Yes, you're absolutely correct. I work with clients all over the world. So it's really fantastic. I love it.
So you don't need to be in immediate contact with the animal or the person that you are trying to, is it called channeling? Is that the right word? Or
Yeah. Channeling would be a good way to
yeah.
describe it. Yeah. Yeah.
So
So And I know, and sometimes it's really hard for people to wrap their mind around, right? Because they're like, well, you're on the other side of the camera. Like, how do you not need to be with my animal? But like I was saying, everything is an energy vibration. So being able to work over Zoom actually is a lot better, I find, with my clients, because sometimes I'm working with an animal who has very, very high anxiety. And so if I was there in person, as much as I try to manage my own energetic space, sometimes that can be too much for an animal too. So, I spend a lot of the time when I'm in person calming the animal down, then having the animal adjust to me being in their space, me interacting with their owner, right? So there's a lot of different dynamics. And so when I'm working over Zoom or virtual, like Skype or telephone, what have you, they can be in their natural environment. They can undisturbed. So they can be sleeping, they can be doing whatever they want. And yeah, that's how I connect. So it's almost like yeah, it's like the electricity that goes through the connection. So that's the best way I can
Okay.
describe it.
Yeah, and I guess very similar to, obviously it's electricity too, that we are able to
Yes.
see each other, right? I mean, all of that. And a lot of people, I think,
Yeah.
understand the physics behind it, but oftentimes logically, we're still having a little bit of a trouble, I think, understanding that you can connect to somebody else's consciousness or being and being able to then interpret
Yeah.
what they're saying. Now, let's talk a little bit about a session. So people would come to your website, and it's MaryPaulette.com, and we'll be sure to share the link in the description below our video. When they book a session with you, how does that go? Do you need a picture? What do you need to connect with an animal?
So typically, if I'm working with a live animal, it's just, so let's say that you had your dog there with you, just a quick camera, shot of your animal. And if they're not able to be on camera, which is totally fun because they don't need to be on camera for, a half hour session. That's a lot to ask of an animal. A picture is fine as well. So
And then you, by being able to then, I'm assuming, I'm just trying to talk myself through how that might work. So
yeah,
you, as a medium, you are basically focusing then on this being by having
yeah.
that picture from them or having their name. And then you are able to connect energetically with that being. Is
Yeah.
that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. And the reason why I ask for a picture is because everyone has their own different energetic signature to them. So oftentimes when I'm working with more than one animal in the house, I like to get a roster of who's in the house, including children, because I can pick up all, as soon as my open sign comes on, I've got a lineup of like people and energies, right, to connect with me. And so what I do is when I see the animal, either through picture or live on the other side, like on the other side of the camera, um, I'm able to identify what their energetic signature is. And then that's how I'm able to determine, okay, so this is so and so who's saying this. This is so and so over here who's saying that.
As you make that connection, are they talking to you, or are you asking questions and then just kind of feel the responses?
Yeah, and you can probably tell by my reaction. It is like a two-way communication. I'm basically a receiver, and it's just a flooding of sensations and visions that go through my head and things that I hear and things that I feel. And so I try as quickly as I can to articulate what I'm experiencing, because they can, it can happen so quickly.
This is so neat. And, I can see such amazing applications because, again, as I mentioned, we do behavior training with our clients. And of course, behavior oftentimes, we come in when the behavior may already be there. And a lot of times it's with animals that may have experiences in the past, which of course we're never aware of, and we just have to move forward. And the beauty is, I think that animals oftentimes are a lot more willing to just leave the past in the past and just step forward into the future.
Yeah.
But I could see where just you being able to give kind of the background or talk to the animal and understand why they're doing these behaviors would be so beneficial. Can you give an example where maybe that has helped you in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I have a client from California. So she rescued a pit bull, and this dog was deemed as un unhomeable, right? Like it wasn't able to be rehomed and they were going to euthanize the dog. And she said, no, I'm going to take her home with me. And so I've been working with her to understand her dog and to understand what her experiences have been in the past. So, because at the shelter, the dog was not able to be around any other animals at all. Through our sessions, she was actually able to go and visit her mom with two little dogs, and all three dogs got along well the entire weekend. Right. I was so happy for her because she was able to set her dog up for success. Right. So it's just like kids. We want to be able to set our animals up for success so that they have that sense of accomplishment and pride as well, because that goes a long way.
That is just so awesome. And I could just see where there are so many benefits in, having somebody like you who can get in a lot deeper and be able to prepare an animal too for change, because I think that's one of the biggest things too, is that oftentimes the animals may not really understand all of the changes that are happening in their lives, especially as maybe they're being adopted or put into new homes. Is there kind of maybe a common message or something that you've experienced over and over that maybe you can share with us?
In terms of, I think it's kind of twofold. So in terms of rescues, it's really about going to your animal with the expectation that they are ready to receive kisses on the face and really, respecting their boundaries. So that's the one that I find with rescues. It's more about coaching the owner, like you were saying, really, than the animals. The animals often say, they just need a little bit more time to decompress. Like don't have an expectation that they're going to be all lovey-dovey, and of course they're excited to see you and they know that you're rescuing them. They know that you're coming with the best of intentions, but they also have other stuff that bubbles up sometimes, right? So it's just like us. We get triggers, and then we have things that we're like, oh, I don't know, but this happened before and then my heart was broken, right? So I think we can all relate to that in relationships and that type of thing. So another aspect of my gifts is that I can taste food. So I can taste things and I can smell. And I often will get the most random requests. So I was working with a rat in Ontario and she wanted cantaloupe. And that's all I could taste was cantaloupe. And she had never had cantaloupe before. And my client gave her cantaloupe that evening and she's like, I can't believe it. She ate almost all of the cantaloupe like right away, like didn't even hesitate, just
That's
dove
so
right into it. So
cute.
yeah, it's pretty cool.
These are obviously now pets that are in the living. Can you talk a little bit about experiences or sessions that you've had with pets that have crossed over?
Yeah, that is an area of my work that I'm really passionate about because I think that grieving our pets is viewed differently than when we grieve people, right? Sometimes there's people don't understand that grieving a pet is no different than losing your loved one, whoever that loved one is. And so the reason why I'm so passionate about it is to be able to give people the space and to hold that space for them to be able to grieve, because sometimes they don't have that opportunity. So I work a lot with a lot of clients who are working through grief from losing their animals, and then also being able to provide them some peace and comfort and the special messages that come through from their animals. And yeah, so it's something that can be sad but at the same time so rewarding. And the way I've come to view death now, when I was younger, I was scared of dying. I used to get panic attacks, and now I'm like, well, no, like life is not over, right?
Yeah.
So we're just continuing on in a different form, right? We're just not in this body form. So
You have connected with so many spirits that have crossed over. It is, I'm assuming, probably 100% positive. Everybody's just happy to be on the other side, right? So it's not like anybody has
yeah, I
anything
would
bad
say
to say.
so. No, not so much bad to say, but there are circumstances just like us where they didn't have time to process what was happening to them because sometimes it was really sudden.
Mhm.
So there's how it occurs for me is we're in living form, then there's kind of this transition area right here. And then over here is when we fully transition and we can go on to our higher purpose, or we can reincarnate, whatever our journey we choose, whatever we would like to do over here. But there's this middle part right here where some spirits do get stuck. And so my job is to help them transition through. And last week alone, I think only had two dogs and a little boy actually that needed to be guided, just holding their hand, right? They just needed that security and that reassurance that they were okay, and just the space for them to get empty on what they didn't get to complete in terms of emotional cycles and that type of thing when they passed. So
at the end of our pets' lives, have to make a decision on whether or not we should, be able to help them make that, make the journey across the rainbow bridge. It's a very difficult decision to make because you don't want to make that decision too early, but you definitely want to make it at the right time. You don't want to make it too late. So I think these are some of the things that you can also be helpful with, right?
Yeah. And so my client this morning, that's all she needed to hear was that her dog was okay. He gave her permission to make the decision whenever it felt like it was the right time for her. And so I think having that permission from your animal, it just creates a different experience of the whole thing as well. And being able to prep people, I know we're never prepared, right? There's no amount of preparation that can heal the heart, the heartstrings when that time comes. But being able to provide the input as to, okay, well, this is what I would like the experience to be like, it makes it a lot more peaceful. And I think that brings a lot of peace and comfort to clients as well. It changes the experience, that it doesn't have to be all about loss as well, right? So yeah.
Yeah, that's very much true.
Yeah.
Now, when we talk loss, have you also helped people that have lost their pets? Just physically, the pet ran away or was lost. Are you able to connect with that as well?
Yes, I am. So lost pets are definitely a different breed. No pun intended there, but they are, my goodness, some of them, it's a really complicated area. At least in my experience, it is, because there's so much that goes into that. Sometimes when they leave because passing or transitioning with the family isn't something that they want, right? So there's that separation there. There's also some circumstances that they don't want to go back to because they can't communicate that was the action that they chose. It is a lot like when, kids run away, right? There's oftentimes a lot of hurt that's in there. But yes, I have worked with several lost animals, and I would say probably about 80% of the cases, we've located the lost pets. The other percentage of cases, unfortunately, they had passed. And then one client, I think it was my very first lost cat. She just said, I don't want to come back. I love you. And this is my new chapter. I want to be wild. I want to live outside. So, and that was hard for my client to hear,
Yeah.
but at the same time, she was like, okay, well, if that's what she really wants, then that's okay. Right. So yeah, we do run into that sometimes too.
Yeah, and that's actually a very interesting perspective because but again, as a behaviorist, I can really see where that's coming from. If you have a great relationship with your pet really isn't going to run away, right? If they get off the leash, unless they are frightened or something happens where their brain is so full of fear, maybe that they're super afraid and start running away and then can't find their way back. But I could see, and I hadn't thought of the fact that, if you have maybe a pet that is constantly getting out of the yard and constantly looking for ways to go away, then there might be a deeper issue that needs to be addressed. And I really like that.
Yeah, yeah, because there was a dog that I was working with and she didn't want to come back either. She wanted to be feral. She was feral to begin with. She was a rescue, then she got adopted, and then she got out of the yard. She just did not want to be in captivity. So that's the other things. And I know that that's really or it can be hard for some people to wrap their mind around or to accept, but it's just like people, not everybody wants to have a child. Not everybody wants to have the same religion. Not everybody wants to do this, and it's the same with animals. Not every animal wants to be domesticated, even though they're a domesticated cat, right?
Yeah.
So, and they're in a shelter. That's not all the time. Yeah, what's meant for their highest good, right? So, and it's really allowing that balance. So, and I know it comes from the goodness of our hearts, right? Because we think, oh my gosh, we don't want animals being out in the open and in the elements and all that kind of stuff. But there is that fine line of, nature's balance too that we have to respect. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess the individual choice, and I think, that's one thing that I certainly walk into every meeting with a new client into, that each dog is different or each pet is different and they all have a personality. And I think
Yeah.
oftentimes as humans, we tend to sort of minimize that a little bit for animals. Even animal lovers oftentimes will think of maybe animals as less complicated, but then we also may not give them sort of the freedom of choice, or having certain things that they may like or dislike, correct?
Yes, that is so very true. And that reminds me of, I like to explain to my clients. So I don't know if you've ever heard of John Gottman, but he developed the 5 love languages. And so with my clients, I like to let them, I like to teach them and tell them about how animals, there are some animals who really experience the world through smelling, right? That is how they activate all their senses through that primary sense. And then there's other animals who need to see everything, right? They're okay as long as they see everything. And then there's some animals that are auditory, there's some that are physical touch. They have their love languages, and some animals have different ways of getting their love cup filled up versus, the typical ways that we think. So cuddles, food, walks, and all that kind of stuff, right? So yeah, there's different ways that we can fill the love cup of our animals, and it's not necessarily the standard ones that we come to think of, right? So
Any thoughts or advice that you could give to people on how to find out what is their animal's love language, or primary love language, I should say?
it's the same thing as when we're lost in something and we're totally like involved in it, and we're focused on that and nothing else in the world exists. That is when you know that you've hit the love language of your animal. So that can happen when you're touching them. You can see that when they're smelling, or if they're just really curious and they want to smell your hair all the time, or they just want to smell, then that's how you know that your dog or your animal is experiencing the world through their smell, right? So smelling is a really important, and I'm sure this is what you coach your clients on too in walks. It's huge, right? Being able to allow their animals to smell, especially before you add in expectation. That's what I like to tell my clients, especially dogs. They really need to have that time where there's no expectation, and then you can get the expectation after, right? So yeah, I don't
That's
know how
neat.
that translates for you in your training, and how smelling comes across on walks and how you coach your clients, but
Yes, you definitely want to not constantly just walk, but you want to stop and let the animal sniff in
yeah,
certain areas, right? But you
yeah,
also don't want to be letting the animal
no,
drag you all over the place. So there's
no,
that
for
balance.
sure.
But I think, yeah,
Yes.
that's very. When you were talking about the love languages, though, I wanted to go back to that. We have Apollo and Heidi, and Apollo is a miniature Australian Shepherd. And his love language is definitely more sight, right? Because he, as a shepherd, just being out in the yard, he'll just lay down wherever I'm at, but he's constantly, you can see him just going from constantly
Yeah.
watching everything. Whereas, the Jack Russell Heidi, that she's like 100% smell, right? So she's constantly smelling and digging and looking for
Yep.
stuff. And so, yeah, that just kind of came to me when you were talking about that. And I think that's so neat, and probably something I'd like to maybe incorporate with our clients, is to kind of just have them think about what is that for your dog, because then you can engage with your animal in much more positive and enriching ways, right? Because the games that you're playing with them or the training that you're doing with them can be very much based on what their primary
Yes.
primary focus is, or their primary love language. I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Especially if you have a dog or an animal that is very smell driven, right? You can use that if that's their high reward, then you can use that as their motivator, right? As a reward for good behavior or anything that you're teaching them, especially on a walk and stuff like that. So yeah.
Any particular incidents or cases that you kind of stand out to you that were just very special, or maybe even touching to you personally?
I've had so many. This week, actually, I had a client connect with me about her two horses. And so she's walking out to the pasture, and I'm on her phone and I'm on Zoom. And she shows me her horse, and I feel him instantly. So the one of the things for me and how I work is I don't connect unless I have permission. That's just the code of conduct and the code of ethics that I've created for myself. Also for a boundary for myself as well, right? And the privacy of people and animals, because I equate that to walking into your house and having the keys and just walking in whenever I want, right? So, and the reason why I share that is because I had asked her for permission before, like as she was walking out. And so he connected with me right away. He came running over. So he was a 4-year-old gelding, and which is a male horse. And he came running over to her and was obsessed with the phone. And I could feel the wave of energy and emotion that was coming through, and he had the most beautiful message for me. Oh, it even makes me like yeah, lose my words here. Yeah, he just, it was just gratitude. I'm getting so emotional. But yeah, gratitude for the service that I'm providing people. Oh my goodness, I'm laughing only because it was just such a beautiful moment.
That
So
was lovely. So he was just super
yeah.
excited just for you to be there, because he knew that you could translate basically for him, right? That he could connect
Yeah.
further. That's really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, and he just
Wonderful.
recognized the part of me that is so passionate about what I do. And that's what it was when he recognized that part. I was like, oh my goodness, I am making a difference in the world, and that's what I want, right? Is to make the difference in as many lives as I can, um, in ways that really help people feel better in their hearts, right? So people and animals. So yeah.
That is so neat. So, MP, you've not always been an animal communicator. I mean, I'm
No.
sure that these gifts that you have, they must have been with you for quite some time, but like career-wise, you haven't always done this, right?
That's right. Yeah, I started my business in 2018. And growing up, I was in aviation and law. So I was trying to decide between becoming a pilot and a police officer. And then I chose policing. So I was a police officer in Ontario for many years. And then I moved out to Calgary. So I was a police officer in Toronto. And when I moved out here, I decided that I wanted to become a flight attendant because I wanted to get back to seeing people in a more positive experience and having them see me in a uniform that didn't represent everything that the uniform represents.
Mhm.
And so I did that for a little while, and then I came into the federal government as a security aviation security inspector.
That's really neat. Can you talk a little bit about the journey of becoming an animal communicator, or how did you discover that you had these gifts and how did you develop them?
So growing up, I always knew that I had something, that I saw the world very differently from the way other people saw the world. I just suppressed it for years and years. And then it got to the point in my early 30s, I was also learning how to speak French for my position at the time with the federal government. So when you're learning a different language, it's activating the right side of your brain. So I was also learning French, and all of these gifts were coming in. And my instructor at the time was a clairvoyant as well, and she did animal communication. So she coached me through it a little bit and said, hey, I think these are your gifts coming through. I think you really need to embrace them. Otherwise, you're going to start getting sick. And that's essentially what had happened. I started getting all of these food allergies and my hair fell out. A good friend of mine, he is also in the spiritual realm. And he said, yeah, you need to accept them. So I was like, okay. So I took a leap of faith and I was like, okay, I can't deny these anymore, because as I'm rejecting them, I'm rejecting myself, which was making myself sick. And I knew I wanted to live life a lot differently. So that's how that all came about. And then from there, I hired a coach in Oregon, actually, and an intuitive coach. And so she coached me through kind of being able to access my gifts a lot more. And yeah, so the journey was really interesting, because when I first started, I didn't know if that meant I was like a tarot card reader, or if I was an angel reader, or if it was Akashic records or energy healing or what have you, because the way my gifts work, um they're not just one, right? So I see, hear, feel, taste, smell, everything. That's how I experience all of my gifts. So yeah, it was really overwhelming. It would be like sitting in the middle of a subway station and feeling everything that everyone's feeling around you, and also hearing it in your head. So there were a lot of times where I didn't know if what I was feeling was mine or not. And I didn't know that when I was younger. And then as I got older, I was like, oh, this is what it's like to feel my own feelings. Wow, this is so different, right? So just being able to separate that. And so that's why I do that practice of asking for permission before I connect, because I don't also want to be plugged into the grid all of the time either. So yeah.
Sure, that makes sense, because you have to be able to have your own life and your own thoughts and be aware of your own. Yeah, that makes perfect
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
And you spoke to getting a coach, and I think that is such a good thing. No matter what it is that you are trying to do, it's always a great idea to have somebody help you, because oftentimes when you're, it's the same, I think, with dog training, and why people hire us. When you, even people that understand dogs and have trained dogs,
Yeah.
sometimes when you're so close to something, it's very hard to see what it truly entails and how you could maybe step forward into making it even better. So I think that's always a good thing. I wanted to
Yeah.
ask you, on your website, and again, we'll share the link to your website in the description below so people can find out more about you, connect with you. But on your website, you also speak about the bioenergy healing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I'm certified in bioenergy healing and the emotion code, 2 energy healing modalities. And so bioenergy healing is using source white light and working with the auras and working through any areas of blockages and rebalancing. So it's a little bit similar to Reiki, but it's not the same hand technique. So that's the bioenergy healing, and you can do it from anywhere as well. And it's a really great healing art. And the emotion code works with removing trapped emotions. So in our body, in our muscle memory, we have stored emotions that are in there from memories. So it's about harmonizing those and releasing those, so that we can experience life for more of what it is, not what those memories tell us it is, if that makes sense. So yeah.
And do you use both of those for animals and humans?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and same, I think, with obviously taking advantage of your services. There are certainly lots of critics that might say, oh, I don't believe that you can energetically connect with another being, or that, animals even have the communication skills to communicate their desires or their conditions. But for those, obviously, who are listening, who are interested to connect with you, share again your website and maybe other ways to get in touch with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is marypaulette.com, and you can also find me on Facebook as Connect with Mary Paulette and Instagram as Mary Paulette McDonough. So you'll see a lot of text will say MP because Mary Paulette can be a handful sometimes for people to say.
Mhm.
So MP is what I go by short, but the full name is Mary Paulette. And if you type that in into Google Animal Communicator, it should come up right away for you. So yeah.
That's great. And again, you're in Canada, but you're available for anybody in the world to connect with you.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. I have clients all over the world, all over Europe, Australia, New Zealand, you name it. So, yeah,
That's awesome.
everywhere.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so excited to have you on the show. Such a great conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It was really lovely.
If you enjoyed today's video, then I know that you'd also want to see more of people with passion for pets. Go ahead and link that playlist for you right over here. And until next time, keep your paws on the road.